What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new quick win. Today we're talking about an interesting topic that a lot of you asked about in the past, and that is how to force update your Ionic application when the user already has installed the application. One thing up front, there's no 100% sure way to implement this, because the user can basically download your application once with a connection, then completely go into airplane for the rest of his or her life, and you got no chance to update that application unless you implement some sort of self-destroying mechanism. But today we will implement a cool feature that you can run whenever your application starts to check for a JSON file on a server, and we will also implement different scenarios to completely lock your application in a maintenance mode, or to display different messages based on the update if it's a major or minor version change. If you want to follow along the code, check out the link below for all Ionic Academy members, and if you're not yet a member, make sure to check it out, ionicacademy.com, my school to help you with everything Ionic. So without further ado, let's dive into today's tutorial. To get started with our quick win, we just need to install a few packages. We actually start with a blank application, and we won't really, I think we will never touch the HTML in this quick win, but we need one additional service which you can easily reuse in your own application to check for updates. Then, since we started a Capacitor application which currently doesn't have the Ionic native core package installed, that totally makes sense. We need to install Ionic native core since we want to use Cordova plugins within our Capacitor application. Especially we want to use the Cordova plugin app version from which we can get the current version of the installed application. And we will also install the Ionic native package to access the package more easily. On top of that, we also install the Cordova plugin in-app browser, simply because the Capacitor plugin, which I will open in a new window for you, didn't totally work for me. So there is a native market plugin for Capacitor that should actually open either the Play Store or the iOS App Store, but for iOS it didn't really work for me. So we actually also need that one, which makes it 3 plugins. This one to get our app version, to make a little comparison. Second one as a fallback for iOS. And this one, the Capacitor plugin to open the native market, which hopefully in the future is the only one, so you don't need that one. Anyway, once you've done all of this, you can move to the app module, in which we now need to inject a few things. Especially we need to inject the HTTP client module. So this one goes to the array of imports to make our HTTP request to a file hosted, let me bring this to the side, on DigitalOcean. I just added 2 files here. We will take a look at them in a second. And then we got the app version and in-app browser plugin, which is usually go to the array of providers. Not with a dot, okay, 3 times. That's a new record, Simon. App version and in-app browser. There we go. Now we got everything for the 2 Cordova plugins, but we also need to apply a slightly small change to our main activity. You can find this in Android, app source main, your package name, and then main activity to use the Capacitor native market plugin. With Capacitor 3, hopefully this isn't necessary anymore. Perhaps when you go through this quick win, you don't have to do this, but for now, you just need to add the import line and the add statement here in the init. We can close this, we can close the app module and focus now on our update service. So I added a few things. Let's take a look at them. I added the 2 links to the JSON files I hosted. I injected everything that we might need, and we will go through the functions in detail, of course. I also generated this app update interface here based on our JSON files. So I added 2 files. They have kind of the same structure. In general, the most important part is the app enabled, true or false? That is the first important criteria. For example, you run some sort of maintenance on your server. In that case, you don't want any user to use the application. This happens all the time to games I play. They have regular downtimes of like maybe half an hour or something like this. And then you could have something like this, enabled false, and then a message why the application is not enabled. We can see this here. We got an enabled bool and a message optional property. Now, in case your app is running just normally, but you released a new version, you can come up with a different JSON like this, where you specify the current version. Of course, you manually need to update this JSON file when you release a new version. Enabled in this case is true, the app is fine, but you want to supply some messages. For example, if there's a difference in major version, so if someone has version 0. whatever, and your latest version is 1.5.0, then the major message should be displayed and there should only be a download button. Then if the user has like version 1.2 and the latest is 1.5, you might want to hint your users that there is a new version with cool new things. So in that case, the minor message will be used. There's a new update, would you like to get it? But users should have the ability to just close this. Since this is not a critical update, in the above case with a major case, you could really block the whole application. And now we will build our logic around this. So first of all, within our service here, we're gonna add our check for update function or implement the check for update function, in which we will use the HTTP client, make a GET request. Let's use the maintenance example first. And then we subscribe, we get a result, which is now of the type info, and we can use our interface app update. So this one's pretty easy. If info.enabled, or actually if it's not enabled, in that case we just want to show an alert. So this dot present alert, header message is something from info message, I don't know, title. The message most likely info message dot message. The button text also from info message dot button. And allow close is set to false, and that's also fine in this case, since we don't want our users to close that modal. We don't need a return, we just have an else block in here anyway, and there won't happen anything afterwards, so we can just implement the present alert. Now, inside the present alert, basically we just want to present an alert. It's not that hard. So const alert await this dot alert controller create, but we need to make this a bit more dynamic. So we got the header, we got the message, and for the buttons we might come up with something, because there are different cases. We need to use the button text, we need to check if close is allowed or not, which can be used for this case as well. What's it called? Allow, something like allow backdrop, backdrop dismiss. Exactly. Backdrop dismiss is only allowed if you're allowed to close the modal. Makes sense, because otherwise you just want to prevent your users in the maintenance case from using the app and tapping the background to close the modal. The alert doesn't really make any sense. Then you call alert.present once you're done. Okay, now we just need to create the buttons, and we can check if the button text is unequal to an empty string. It might happen that we don't have any specific button text, so this will just be one additional button. Also, we can check if close is allowed. In that case, we want to simply push the standard close button. So buttons, push, text, whatever you want. You could also specify fallback text. You could anyway make those JSONs exactly to your needs. Just figure out what will happen when your application updates, what you want to do in the application. And this one have the role cancel. So that will be a pretty easy button. If close is allowed, we just have that close button in here, and if we've specified a button text, we also want to push a button with the text. Guess what? Button text. But in that case, we also want to have a special handler because button text will always be set. So okay, it will be actually set in here as well. That could be a little problem. So let's not pass the button in the case of the maintenance update and just use those two fields. Then button text will be empty. So we don't have any kind of button for the maintenance case, but in all the other cases, we want to display the download button. Actually, I could have removed that button right here, but anyway. So the handler, okay, yeah. I think I have to add any in here to make you happy. Okay, so the handler in that case should open our native App Store entry, and therefore we're going to implement it just like we're used to in the Ion alert. Handler was clicked, and then we will call a function to open the App Store entry. Okay, look, open me. We're going to do this later. So for now, we got everything in place. I think we can actually check out our application. Let's maybe add a little log here, result from the API, so we can log out a bit more information. And then hopefully, do you want to reload? Am I actually running in reload? Oh, we're not really calling check for update yet. Yeah. I think the app component is a great place. This is the first component in your application. So right in here, when the platform is ready, we should wait for this because we're once again using Cordova plugins. So I just want to make sure that those plugins are initialized correctly. So let's add the private update service in here, update service. And when the platform is ready, we will just call update service check for update. We could also only inject it and then do everything from the constructor, but I think having this line to really check for an update is a good idea. Okay, we get a result for our maintenance, and we see the alert app maintenance. We're currently improving your app. We don't have any buttons, and the backdrop can't close this modal. So users can only close the application and come back at a later point and hope that the application then works. Now let's use our update example instead. In that case, the application isn't immediately blocked here, so the application is enabled, which means we will also show an alert, but we need to find out about the major or the minor differences. So first of all, we now need to get the version number of our application, which we can do. We should use await in here. And if we use await, we also need to add async in here for our subscribe block. Await this dot app version. I think get version number. So get version number returns the version number. Who would have thought? From our application, which we can see, for example, in Xcode, or we could maybe do this from our editor. It should be in app. I think inside the info plist. Is there something like a version somewhere? My eyes, I don't see anything. Product name, bundle identifier. Actually, maybe it's not in there. It's in a different file. But there's definitely a file on iOS as well. It's usually in app info plist, but I don't see it. Perhaps you see it. Current project version might be something like this. So perhaps because I controlled this from Xcode, it's not in there. But usually this is the version, not the build number, but the version. For Android, you can actually find it inside the build Gradle file. So here, for example, I specified the 1.2 for the version name. So that means we get back a version number, which is like 1.2.0, something like this. And now we need to split that string so we can compare the different sections. First of all, we want to check if there's a difference inside the major version and then inside the minor version. I don't think checking for the patch version and displaying an alert is really necessary in most cases. So let's say const splitted version equals version number dot split, and we want to split by the dot. And then we also want to get the version from the server, which is interesting because that's inside the JSON file hosted here. So you can manually update this once your application is released. We will call this server version equals, this should now be in the result from our HTTP call info.current, and we're gonna split that string as well. And there we go. Now we have two interesting parts. Let's just log out one of them. Let's say this is the splitted and this is the server version. If we now check our application, we will see exactly, that we don't have Cordova. So we can't get our version number. Great, but perhaps we can at least see the server version splitted. So that is our splitted version. Now we just need to compare this one to the one from our app, which on a device will of course work. It just doesn't work inside the browser because it's a Cordova plugin, so please don't try to do this. All right, that's actually a quite easy check. So if server version at the position 0 is greater than splitted version at the position 0, it means our server version, the server major version right here, is 1 and our application has 0. So we're gonna display the major alert. In the other case, else if server version 1 bigger than splitted version 1, we're gonna display another alert, but this time it's just a hint since only the minor version changed. We can once again copy the present alert here. We're gonna use message, what's it called? Major message.title and major message.message. And I think we will also use info.major-message.button. That was the third parameter. And allow close is by default false, so we can keep it like that. Because in case of a major version change, we completely want to lock the application and only allow download. In this case, we can replace everything in here with minor, so minor message, minor title, minor button name, and in that case, we will also allow closing the application. Okay, great. We got everything inside the app component, so now it's time to check this on the device. You can run it with the updated or maintenance example, but we actually forgot one thing, the most important part, and that's guiding the user to the App Store entry. Okay, as I said before, the problem is that the Capacitor plugin isn't completely working. So therefore, we have the good old this platform is check in here. So if the platform is Android, we can use the native market plugin. I added the import already at the top. This is also most likely different in Capacitor 3. If you check this video out in like a few months from now, the native market plugin won't be imported or destructured from the plugins object, but should be imported from their own package. Just a quick hint to make sure the lifetime of this video is longer than 1 week. Okay, in that case, for the native market, why is there no code completion? But from what I've seen of the plugin, I think it is called Open Store Listing. Right. So Open Store Listing, and to the Open Store Listing, we just pass the app ID. Great. I will use one app ID from my applications, which is comdevdactic.instagram companion. It's actually one of the last applications I still have live. And now for iOS, we need the different approach. Once again, in the future, you might just need this line to target both Android and iOS. In that case, we will use the in-app browser and create this one with a string that I will bring in. So this one is an app link to the App Store, and you just need to find out the ID of your application. If you reuse, what's it called by now? iOS Connect, Apple Connect, iTunes Connect, I think, or something like this. Wherever, you can find your ID of your application and just need to exchange it in here. And of course, use the right bundle ID for Android as well. As a second parameter, I think we need to add blank in here. Perhaps that's not even necessary 100%, but that's the way for iOS, which works super easy. So now you can run Ionic build, capacitor, platform add, iOS, Android, whatever, and sync, and then let's see this on a device. All right, so I started the application, and as you can see inside Xcode, I got the version 1.2. Inside our JSON file, we specified the current to be 1.5, which means there's a difference inside the minor version. So we are allowed to close that dialog, but we are also allowed to directly click download to open the App Store with our application. Now let's try and change the version to something like 1.8 and run this on a device again. In that case, there's a difference with the major version, which means we actually see the result in here now as well. Not super interesting. But that means the application should be blocked right away in the beginning when opening, since a major change indicates our current application, where's my app, that we want to only allow download. We can't press the background, so I'm really trying to. We can only click download and we can't close this window now. And once again, with download, I'm back inside the App Store. For Android, it's completely the same, and we would be back. Now, one catch is there, as you can just see, I went back from the App Store to our application, and the application is unlocked. That, of course, shouldn't happen. So what you could do on top of that mechanism to prevent any action like this is to implement a handler to the platform resume event, and in there perform basically the same. Perhaps just call check for update in the app resume as well, and then also if the user simply resumes the application, the same procedure and dialog stuff would be triggered. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick win on how to guide your users to update the application, to block the application. There's also a full package called Man-Up, Ionic Man-Up. You can search it on GitHub, that implements kind of the same mechanism, but I just wanted to keep it simple. It can really work like this for most applications, where you just make a call to a JSON file and compare the versions to your app version, and then it's enough to implement a force update mechanism or to guide your users to an update in case of a minor version change, or to block it in case of maintenance. Once again, if you want to see the full code, check out link below the video, and if you're not yet a member, make sure to check it out, ionicacademy.com. And also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button to get notified about the upcoming videos, and I will catch you next week like always. So happy coding, Simon.